Have you ever really thought about how the Bible is put together? That it's not just a random collection of books? The order itself, law, then history, poetry, it's telling a story. And today, we're stepping right into the middle of that story, into a tale of two very different paths. You know, a lot of the world's sacred books are collections of prayers or wise sayings or visions. But the Bible, it does something different. It's not just an assortment of spiritual ideas. It dares to tell one single, massive, overarching story, from a beginning that none of us were there to see to an end that's beyond where our own history will finish. And we're about to step right into the thick of it, a place where God's grand purpose crashes right into human failure. Okay, so let's get into the first book, Judges. Picture this. Joshua is gone. Moses is just a memory. There's no national leader, no king to guide the people. And in that power vacuum, something really dangerous and really subtle starts to happen. You see, this is how forgetting God usually starts. It's not some big, dramatic event. It's a slow fade. A new generation comes along that has heard all the stories, but they don't have the fire their parents did. The memory of miracles just becomes tradition. Obedience stops being about love and becomes a habit, and then pretty soon, it just becomes about what's convenient. And before you know it, the gods of the neighbors start to look pretty normal, comfortable, even useful. And this one sentence, it shows up again and again in the book of Judges, like a tolling bell. But listen carefully to what it says and what it doesn't say. It doesn't say everyone did what was wrong. It says they did what was right, in their own eyes. And that's the subtle poison, isn't it? When my truth becomes the only truth that matters, that's how the whole thing starts to unravel. And once God isn't at the center anymore, history stops moving forward. It just starts going in circles. Israel forgets God. Then they're oppressed by their enemies. In all that pain, they cry out for help. And God, because he's faithful, sends a deliverer, a judge, to rescue them. But then the cycle just starts all over again. It's all motion with no direction. And these deliverers, these judges, we have to be clear they weren't heroes, not in the way we think of heroes. I mean, they were deeply flawed people. You have Gideon, who was full of fear, and Samson, who had no discipline at all. They brought a temporary rescue, sure, but they couldn't heal the heart of the nation. Because they weren't there to be heroes to inspire us. They were there to be mirrors, to warn us. Now, it would be really easy to look at all this chaos and just think, well, where was God in all of this? But if that's all we see, we're missing the most important truth. God wasn't absent in the book of Judges. He was right there in the middle of it, even in the downward spiral. The Bible says something that's, well, it's pretty unsettling. It says that God actually sent enemies against them. He allowed these other powers to rise up. He let pain become the teacher that memory had failed to be. This is what's called divine discipline. And it wasn't because he had abandoned them. It was the exact opposite. It's because he had. So when you dig down to the root of it all, the deep spiritual problem wasn't political. It wasn't just about the absence of a human king sitting on a throne. You see, Israel already had a king, but he was invisible, and they really struggled with that. The core issue, the real problem, was their refusal to simply live under the authority of God as their one true king. And so the book ends, right where it began, with that same haunting line. It gives us the brutal answer to a question we're still asking today. What happens when every single person becomes their own ultimate authority? The answer isn't freedom. It's chaos. And then, just like that, all the noise stops. The clamor of warfare, the stories of public failure and collapse, it all goes silent. It's as if the camera pulls way, way back from the nation and slowly zooms in on just one family. And that brings us to the book of Ruth. It opens with this simple, powerful phrase, "In the days when the judges ruled." So we know it's the exact same time period, the same broken nation, but oh, it's a completely different spirit. The contrast is just stunning. On one hand, you have Judges, which is all about public collapse, warfare, and that downward spiral. But then you have Ruth, which is about private faith, a harvest, and a story that moves in a straight line directly toward hope. While the nation of Israel was literally tearing itself apart, God was quietly at work, building something beautiful in an ordinary family. And if the heart of this quiet little story is a woman named Ruth, a Moabite, a total outsider, and she says these words, one of the most incredible declarations of faithfulness in the entire Bible. This is pure faith, with absolutely no guarantee of reward.
It's just a choice to walk into a totally unknown future, guided by nothing but loyalty.
So what looks on the surface like this beautiful, simple story of loyalty and maybe a little romance is actually something so much more intentional. God is quietly, carefully weaving a future.
Yeah, this is where the story pivots from something personal to something prophetic. This isn't just a romance. This is divine architecture. God isn't just rescuing one family from starvation. He is preparing a king for the very nation that had turned its back on him.
So as we watch Ruth find kindness from Boaz in the fields, as this whole story of redemption plays out, the real question we should be asking is this: what was God really building here, in the background of all that chaos?
And here it is. This is the payoff. Through their quiet faithfulness, Ruth and Boaz have a son named Obed, and Obed has a son named Jesse, and Jesse has a son named David. The king that Israel was missing in Judges, his lineage, his story begins right here, with the quiet faithfulness of people who chose to live rightly when there was no king to guide.
This is where these two ancient books turn and speak directly to us, right now, because they aren't just history lessons. They are meant to hold up a mirror and to offer a profound hope.
So you see how it works? Judges is the mirror. It's a very sobering warning about what happens to any person or any society that pushes God out of the center. But Ruth is the hope. It's this quiet, steady promise that small acts of faithfulness done in forgotten places can literally change the entire course of history.
And the ultimate message, the single thread that ties both of these books together, is really this. The point isn't that God needs human kings to get his work done. The point is that we, as people, desperately need God as our king. And so we're left with these two paths, this mirror and this hope. The first path teaches a hard lesson, that when we make ourselves our own king, life will always, eventually turn in circles. Just motion without direction. But that second path, it shows us that even in the darkest times, one small act of faithfulness can draw a straight line right toward redemption and change everything forever.